Have you ever found yourself face to face with death, standing upright only with your courage and a sense of responsibility you feel toward your friends? What if in this situation, the lives of 18 of your friends depended solely on the decisions you made? The story I'm going to tell you today is the incredible tale of courage and sacrifice that an American officer experienced in a Nazi prison camp. You can also send your similar stories to the email address provided in the description.
I am Major William Harrison. The year is 1944, and the place is Stalag Luft III prison camp in the heart of Germany. Before I tell you how I got here, you need to remember that cold November night. The wind was whistling through the camp's barbed wire, our footsteps echoing on the frozen ground. That night, the lives of 18 of my friends were in my hands, and I knew I was going to get them out of there. The beginning of this story actually dates back 6 months earlier, to May of 1944. I was 29 years old then, 6 feet tall, a broad-shouldered officer. My brown hair was always neatly combed. Determination sparkled in my green eyes. My wife Margaret always used to say, "When you look into Bill's eyes, you know he'll never give up." I didn't know then how true those words would prove to be.
Just a few weeks after the Normandy landings, we were on patrol duty near Saint-Vith, a small town in northern France. It was early morning, dew was still glistening on the grass. Suddenly, German soldiers surrounded us, explosions, and then, darkness. When I woke up, my hands were cuffed behind my back, and I was being transported to a prison camp in the back of a truck with 12 of my friends.
Stalag Luft III was a hell built among pine forests, surrounded by barbed wire. Inside the camp were approximately 1,500 American and British pilots and officers. The barracks were long, gray-painted wooden structures. 30 people stayed in each one. The windows were small and barred. In winter months, we could see our breath vapor inside. In the first days, I tried to learn the order of the camp. Wake up at 6 in the morning, roll call, then limited breakfast. Roll call again at noon and the same in the evening. The Germans kept everything to the minute, but I was also observing them. I was noting guard changes, patrol routes, the camp's weakest points. The living conditions in the camp were unbearable. Morning breakfast was just a spoonful of oatmeal and a bitter liquid that was called coffee. Lunch was a watery soup and a small piece of bread. Dinner was similarly insufficient. Seeing my friends getting thinner day by day affected me deeply.
In winter months, the situation got even worse. We only had a small stove in our barracks, and fuel was very limited. At night, we had to sleep hugging each other to stay warm. The windows were covered with ice, and in the mornings, our breath vapor rose like clouds in the room. Most of my friends' hands and feet were frostbitten. Every morning during roll call, I will never forget the way the German officers looked at us. Commandant Muller was a tall, bald man with gray eyes. His face always carried a cold expression. He addressed us as Amerikaner Schwein, but there was also a hidden fear in his eyes, because he knew the course of the war was changing.
The most difficult aspect of the camp was not just the physical conditions, but hopelessness. Seeing the light of hope in my friends' eyes fade a little more each passing day wounded me deeply. Some of my friends cried sobbing in the silence of the night. They missed their homes, their families, their loved ones. Evenings were the hardest time. My friends and I often talked about our homes. I would talk about Margaret, how I met her, our small house in Boston, the rose trees in its garden. I still remember the smell of the pancakes Margaret made on Sunday mornings, how her brown hair sparkled in the sunlight, how much she loved her blue dress. Before the war, I had promised her, "I will always protect you." Now here I was, sitting helplessly. Young Sergeant Tommy Rodriguez was just 23 years old, a dark-skinned, curly-haired boy. His mother had immigrated from Mexico to America. Tommy often asked, "Major, will we be able to get out of here?" The worry in his eyes gnawed at me. I loved listening to Tommy tell about his home in El Paso. He would talk about the tacos his mother prepared, his father playing guitar, his little sister dancing. "Maria is only 16, Major. She's waiting for me to return," he would always say. Another friend of mine, Captain James O'Connor, was a red-haired, freckled pilot with a Boston accent. He was a Harvard graduate and had been studying law before the war. Under Jim's seemingly weak physical structure lay a will of steel. He would be the first person to support my plan. Jim often said, "Bill, it's better to fight for freedom than to die like a dog here." His family was a wealthy family in Boston. His father worked at a renowned law firm. Jim's dream was also to become a lawyer like his father after the war. My youngest friend, Private Bobby Mitchell, was only 19 years old. This blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy from Alabama reminded me of my own son. Bobby's family were poor farmers working in cotton fields. He had volunteered for the war. He constantly told me stories from home. He would talk about the cornbread his mother made, his father's old-timer stories. "Major, my mother said in her last letter that she prays every night. Bring Bobby back to me safe and sound," he would say. This child's innocence and hope for life always affected me. We had other friends in the camp, too. Corporal Dave Washington was a black soldier from Detroit. His wide smile lifted our morale even on the darkest days. Dave would talk about his mother who worked in a factory, about his siblings. "After the war, I'll work in a factory and buy a house," he would always say. Sergeant Michael O'Brien was an Irish-American soldier from Chicago. This red-haired, strongly built man was the strongest person in the camp. He would encourage our friends. By the end of October, it was time to make a decision. The Germans were getting increasingly harsh. Food portions were decreasing. Our sick friends weren't getting enough medicine. One night, I heard Tommy groaning with high fever. I realized I couldn't endure this situation any longer. I carefully prepared my plan. On the eastern side of the camp, there was a small gap where the pine forest was closest. The guards checked this area only once every 15 minutes between 2 and 4 o'clock at night. If we moved fast enough, we could get through the barbed wire during this time period. I developed this plan for weeks. I learned the Germans' shift hours, their walking routes, which guards were more careless. I was also drawing mental maps of the forest around the camp. We would exit from the eastern side, then proceed south, pass through small villages to reach the main road. We needed to travel approximately 70 kilometers to reach the Allied lines. I calculated at least 4 days for this distance. But the most difficult part of my plan was convincing my friends, because if we were caught, the penalty would be death. According to camp rules, every prisoner who attempted to escape would be shot. We all knew this, but I was beginning to realize that staying here also meant dying slowly. One evening, we had quietly gathered in our barracks. There was fear in Tommy's eyes. "Major, what if we get caught?" he asked. I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "Tommy, staying here also means dying slowly. At least we'll have fought for freedom." Jim supported my plan. "Bill is right, boys. Rather than rotting away here, we should try our luck," he added. Bobby said, "I'm coming with you, Major. My mother and father would be proud." The other friends also decided to join one by one. In the first week of November, I decided to put our plan into action, but there was a problem. Sergeant Rodriguez's fever had risen. He was having difficulty breathing. I couldn't leave him and go. "Tommy, I can't leave you here," I said. He replied, "Major, I won't be a burden on you. Go, come back when you rescue me." That night, we reviewed our plan one last time. The guard change would be at 2 o'clock. We would move at 2:15. After passing through the barbed wire, we would cross the 5-kilometer forest area to reach the main road, and from there try to advance toward the Allied lines. At midnight, we could hear our heartbeats. I could feel my friend's tense breathing. My watch showed 2:14. With my signal, we quietly left the barracks. In the dark night, only the dim light of the distant searchlight was visible. As we approached the barbed wire, I took out the wire cutters that Jim had prepared. The metal was cold, my hands were trembling. But my determination remained steady. I started cutting the wire. Every sound could give us away. My friends were keeping watch. When the first wire was cut, a small whirring sound came out. We froze. Guard voices could be heard, but they weren't coming toward us yet. I continued. Second wire, third wire. Finally, an opening sufficient for us to pass through was created. Now, I whispered. We began to pass through the barbed wire one by one. Bobby went first, then Jim, then the others. I would be last. I saw my friends reach the forest edge. It was my turn. Just as I was passing through the barbed wire, one of my feet got caught. A small metal sound came out. A voice was heard from afar. Was es das? The German guard had become suspicious. My heart was pounding. My friends were waiting for me in the forest. I finally managed to get through. Running, I reached my friends. Quick, we must get away, I said. Inside the pine forest, only the moonlight lit our way. Branches scratched our faces, but we didn't stop. We kept moving forward. The forest sounds echoed in our ears. The hooting of owls, the rustling of wind in the trees, the crackling of dry leaves underfoot. Every sound made us shudder. We couldn't tell if we were being followed. On the first night, we traveled about 15 kilometers. Our feet had started to ache. We got tired very quickly due to the poor nutrition in the camp. Bobby had sprained his ankle but wasn't complaining. Tommy's cough had increased. Jim was constantly watching the surroundings. Dave was praying silently. Michael was trying to encourage all of us. We walked until morning. When the sun rose, we took a break by a small stream. There was fatigue on my friends' faces, but hope sparkled in their eyes. Major, we did it, Bobby said. Not yet, my boy. We're still at the beginning of our journey, I said. When we leaned toward the water, we could see the change in our reflected faces. We were now free people. The second day was harder. Walking on an empty stomach, moving forward without stopping. Around noon, we passed near a small village. We heard dogs barking. We had to be very careful. Germans could be everywhere. When evening came, we hid in an abandoned hut. We rested there a bit. We hid in the forest for 3 days. We walked at night, rested among the bushes during the day. We had very little food. We drank water from the stream. On the 4th day, we heard motor sounds from afar. They were American jeeps. We had reached the Allied lines. Together with my friends, we gained freedom. But I never forgot Tommy. After the war ended, I learned that Tommy was alive during the liberation of that camp. He returned to America with me. This story is not just about my courage, but about the trust and loyalty of 18 friends to each other. Because true heroism lies in risking your own life to save others.
This story shows us that even in the darkest moments, the light of hope should never be extinguished. Sometimes in life, the most courageous decisions are made in the most difficult moments. The sense of responsibility we feel toward our friends motivates us to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. After listening to this story, think about what difficulties you have faced in your own life and how you overcame them.